two, one, two, three.
Hello and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Theresa Alt. I am here today with Evan Sunshine and Stephanie Heslop, both baristas at Ithaca Starbucks. On Friday, March 8th, 2022, at the Tompkins County Workers Center, I joined Ithaca Starbucks workers for a Zoom to watch their ballots being counted by the National Labor Relations Board. As you have surely heard, all three stores in the city of Ithaca now have NLRB recognized unions. And I am now going to talk with two of these union workers, Stephanie Heslop, my DSA comrade for several years, and Evan Sunshine, whom I have just recently met, talk to them about how this came about and where they go from here. So, Evan Sunshine, where do you work and what is your job there?
I am a barista at the College Avenue location of Ithaca Starbucks. It's located on College Avenue, as the name suggests, in the intersection between College Avenue and Dryden Road.
Yes, a very busy corner. And how long have you worked there?
I've worked there since August of 2020, although I've been hired at Starbucks since December of 2019.
So you first worked somewhere else in Ithaca?
Yes. I hail from Long Island, so I was first hired on Long Island.
Oh, okay. And what brought you to Ithaca?
I attend Cornell University. So, I started here as a freshman in August of 2020. So that's why I transferred here.
Okay. In other words, started as a freshman at Cornell, transferred as a Starbucks worker. Okay.
Yes.
Stephanie Heslop, where do you work and what is your job there?
I am a barista at the Meadow Street Starbucks. I actually started at the Commons location in October. I transferred to Meadow Street when that store opened in January. And something that I think is really cool is that we went public with our union drive. All three stores went public together, and the Meadow Street store had been open for like a week or a week and a half when that happened. I'm pretty proud of that.
Wow. So, in other words, a brand new store and immediately starts a union drive. Well,
Yep.
Come to think of it, why not? Why isn't that a standard thing in this society?
I would love to see it become standard. Yeah.
Maybe it will.
Actually, something that we talked about in class today is that we were talking about the rise of unions and the modern wave that's hitting, especially with Starbucks, and that a lot of the current unionization efforts are because of the spread of information through social media. People who were not aware of workers' rights are becoming more aware just by scrolling through Instagram or on Twitter or something like that. And then as they become more informed, they become more wanting of unions at their own workplaces.
Uh-huh. Well, that's interesting. That's good. That's encouraging. So just as I guess people Twitter about their new computers and new clothes and new shoes, and other people start to want those things, now people Twitter about their unions. Evan, is that how union organizing started at the College Town store? How did it start there?
Union organizing started with my friend who lives in Buffalo. And when she came to school this past August, and she met me, she's like, Starbucks in Buffalo is unionizing. They just announced they're going to launch a campaign. Did you hear about it? At that point, I hadn't. So I did research into it. I'm like, that's so awesome. She's like, that's something that maybe would be really cool to spread around. It hadn't yet. It was kind of, an Ithaca, it was kind of a Buffalo exclusive thing at the time because it was right when the campaign came out. And she gave me a pin, and it was one of the other pin, like, this person supports Starbucks Workers United. And I wore it on my apron, actually, because the manager at the time didn't seem like she really cared if I would do that or not. So I wore that for a while, and that manager quit because she was being mistreated by upper management. And it was around that time, especially with getting a new manager and how that new manager treated us, that I realized that workers at Starbucks are really mistreated. And even people in higher management, if there's somebody in a spot above you, then they can take advantage of you. And so that's kind of what opened my eyes. And I was discussing all of this with one of my coworkers, and he said, well, you know who can help you with that? And he pointed to the pin that I was wearing on my chest, on my apron. So that kind of gave me the light bulb, and I contacted Gary Bonadonna from Workers United to see what we can do and how we can join the union rage. So, yeah.
Oh, cool. So the idea kind of came from Buffalo by word of mouth. Then, well, you said you were talking about unions in a class of yours. Does that mean that you are in ILR?
Yes, I'm an ILR student. So I was already very informed about unions. Other students seeing the union come here, they're very excited about it, especially with something as familiar to them as Starbucks.
Yeah.
You want to maybe explain what ILR is?
Yes. So ILR is Industrial and Labor Relations. It is a labor studies major that is also interdisciplinary. So it also covers topics like economics, law, public policy, things along that way, also sociology, psychology, behavioral psychology, things like that, and seeing how they all come together and relate those things to labor. So that's really interesting. Lots of focus on unions and how unions interact with management. So it's been really great to be able to apply what I've learned to our unionization effort.
Yeah, that's cool if you're studying something and living through it at the same time. Well, Stephanie, you say that union organizing started as soon as the Meadow Street store opened.
For us at the Meadow Street store, we went public pretty much immediately. But as I said, I was working at the Commons location before that, from October to January. And pretty much as soon as I started working, I was connected with some of the workers at College Town when we were talking about the union. And then when Buffalo won in December, then pretty much everyone was talking about it. So that's when things picked up a lot. And we were able to get a super majority of people on cards at all three stores and go public in January.
Yeah. Well, you said get people on cards. Maybe you could explain the process.
Oh, well, in order to file for an election with the National Labor Relations Board, at least 30% of the bargaining unit has to sign cards saying that they want to be represented by the union. But we had more than 2/3 of workers at all three stores. So well over what we needed to have.
Yeah. Now I know there's a concept called card check. Well, yeah, maybe Evan, you say what card check is and why it wasn't used here.
Yeah, so as I'm aware, card check is when Starbucks recognizes the amount of cards themselves without having to go through the union. So there's no need to have an election. Starbucks would recognize the union. However, Starbucks does not want to recognize the union, has not recognized the union, and instead would prefer to engage in ruthless union busting tactics. So while other companies might embrace unions or be neutral about them and therefore use a card check, Starbucks does not and will not.
Yeah, I mean, I seem to recall that it was a card check type process when the teachers at New Roots Charter School said they wanted a union. And the principal pretty much said, why not?
One Ithaca Starbucks worker expressed to me a lot of surprise that people were so impressed that we were the first city in the country to be 100%, Starbucks union stores, because they were like, we already signed the cards, months ago. Like, we knew this was going to happen. And it just struck me that, like, it should have been like that, right? When we signed cards, that should have been it, but it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah, management has to get a chance to try to persuade you to vote against the union, even though you did sign cards, and to have an official election. Now, I think, Evan, you mentioned mistreatment from upper to lower. So maybe you could say why various workers were a little more about what the work experience is. Actually, I should say that to both of you, and why your work experience makes you want a union.
So we found with Starbucks that all of their tactics to try to scare people out of the union just made people want to unionize more. So we experienced things that, were just subtle manipulation to straight up bullying. We got a new manager who was planted at our store. We suspect specifically for the purpose of union busting, seeing as she's leaving very soon and took a vacation promptly after we won. She has just been doing this thing where she targets certain employees, negatively, who she believes are in very strong support of the union. She will straight up bully them sometimes, mistreating them verbally, saying things to them like they're incompetent and stuff like that. She's also been scheduling people for a lot less hours than they should be scheduled. Even if they're full-time workers, they're being scheduled under 30 hours per week. On top of that, some workers are being scheduled more than they asked to. Students, by precedent, are given time off during academic breaks because a lot of maybe a little under the majority of workers at our store are Cornell students. So usually the precedent is that during breaks, like academic breaks, they're given time off to go home and see their families. But 7 students, including me, were denied our time off requests. So basically we would have to stay in Ithaca. We wouldn't be able to go home. We wouldn't be able to see our families unless we found coverage. I'm glad that I was able to, because I was scheduled for probably the least amount of shifts, fortunately. But I feel for my coworkers who had to stay in Ithaca. On top of that, she also targeted some workers in a positive way, where she would just kind of drown them in, like nice words and like sugar-coated language, like, oh, what do you want to do? What are your dreams and aspirations? I can help you get there. You want a job in HR? I can definitely get you a job in HR. Things like that, just to try to, butter them up and make that seem and almost entice them, as if they vote no, that is all the stuff they'll get. And by the way, that's illegal. So, props to her for breaking the law. So that's just a few of the things that happen at College Avenue, but we definitely have experienced a lot of union busting. And I would say even around Ithaca, just general manipulation, flooding in of managers, district managers, regional managers, support managers, just all over the place, trying to cause problems, to hinder the ability of workers to do their jobs on the floor effectively, things like that. I'm sure Stephanie could also speak on that.
Yeah, definitely. After we went public, there was stuff happening at all 3 stores, but at my store, at a certain point, it sort of stopped. The like quote unquote support managers went away, and like things were much more laid back. And I think that they thought that because there were fewer people who were like vocally, visibly supportive of the union, that that we'd lose the vote, but we didn't. It was nearly unanimous. Only one person voted no. And I've heard that a meeting yesterday that our store manager had with these shift supervisors basically went very badly. They're going to do a whole bunch of hiring when many of us aren't getting the hours that we need and were promised to begin with. I think they're punishing us for voting yes. Trying to, push people out and replace us with, people who won't be supportive of the union.
That's something I'm definitely going to also talk about with one of my professors who is an LRB attorney in another state, but just generally asking for advice, because I'm pretty sure, based on what I've learned, that is, overpacking the store is a form of retaliation, considering it came after a union vote, and a retaliation is against the law. You can't retaliate against workers for voting yes or for expressing their opinions on unionization. So that's definitely not a good thing. And noticed that. They want to pack 18 people into Ithaca on the Commons. How are you going to hire 18 more people? They're pretty much full staffed already. How are you going to, if you hire 18 more people there, you're going to have 40 employees. That's a lot to schedule for only around 60 hours per day that of coverage hours that are distributed out to workers.
Yeah, and I had talked to my store manager about being promoted, and he was very positive about it. Gave me information on taking the next step with Starbucks, said we meet and talk about it. But then at the meeting yesterday, he was talking about hiring 2 shift supervisors from outside the store when there are a couple of us who want to be promoted and have said so. Yeah, definitely, I think clear retaliation, because it's just not possible for me to live on part-time barista wages. Having more hours and a higher wage would make it, possible for me to stay in this job, long term. As it is, I either need to find a second job or quit if they won't promote me.
I've actually been looking for promotion myself, but this happened long before the union. I've been asking for pretty much 10 months now. Oh, no. I started asking in May of last year. So it's been 11 months, almost an entire year, that I've been asking to be promoted to a trainer position. I've been working at Starbucks for 2.5 years, and I figure I know a lot about what I do and I can help other people, and I already do. And I've asked many different managers about it because I've had to transfer a few times for summer break work and things like that. And coming back here when we had a lot of manager turnover, I probably spoke to 5 different managers about it, all saying that they'll get to it. They'll get to training me to become a trainer. And they never did. Finally, I was able to complete my online certification for it, but I haven't been officially certified for it because the manager needs to do it. And out of a form of retaliation, she's just refusing to certify me. She's ignored me. She's ignored my request for it, saying that she'll get to it. She never does. And now she's taking a week-long vacation. I see how she doesn't really want to honor any of those store requests right now. And so it's making me a little uncomfortable that it's almost been an entire year and I haven't heard about my promotion. So after that, I basically said that, she basically wasn't honoring anyone's request at that point, except that before her vacation, she started certifying other people who have only been working at Starbucks for 4 or 5 months, way less than I have. I've been working for 2 years more than that, and I'd been asking for an entire year. And it seems at this point that she doesn't want to honor it solely because of the fact that I'm outwardly in the news about the union stuff. So, I feel like that is a form of retaliation, that me speaking out about the union in support of the union. I've never said anything bad about her publicly, and anything that I've never name called her or anything like that. And I've been nothing but civil to her in person. In fact, so all the support managers have come in. I've been nothing but civil, respectful. So there's no reason for them to retaliate against me other than against the union. So this has definitely been something that has affected me through this. And that's probably the biggest form of upset that I've had about the situation, as in a personal way.
So we see the problems that come with, or the challenges that come with union organizing. Is there anything else you want to say about the process? I mean, let's just imagine there's a different company and people hear, hey, a union. Oh, maybe that would be possible in our workplace. What should they do?
So it's a few step process, but when you're starting a campaign, before you launch, there's a whole process that you have to go through as well. So first you want to start by organizing your most trusted employees who you believe will support the union. Maybe at first 2 or 3 people before you start building your actual organizing committee. And these people will start to map out the workplace. So mapping out the workplace would be seeing who has a relationship with who is whose sibling, who goes to school where with which employee, and seeing if you talk to this one employee, will there be a domino effect that kind of branches out so that everybody is informed of the union in their own way, in a way that makes them feel comfortable. So obviously some of us in the 2 or 3 group at our store spoke to some employees, and eventually some of them, if we're like, are you really interested in a union, we would rank them on a scale of 1 through 5, where 1 is very supportive of the union and wants to participate in the union organizing, and 5 being as in vehemently against the union, has spoken out against the union, things like that. So the workers who chose one, we added them to our organizing committee. So, because the next step is to create an organizing committee of the people that just absolutely love the union and want to participate and want to help out and things like that. And our organizing committee consisted of all 3 stores in Ithaca. Usually in other stores, it would just be that one store. For other like companies and things like that. And once that happens, then you obviously, at this point, you probably need to start gathering cards and things like that. So you start to plan out your campaign. When should we go public? When should we file for an election? If you're organizing with a pre-existing union rather than an independent union, this is about the time where you probably should be in contact with them. Like, we want to unionize and we want to be affiliated with you, things like that. In that case, they'll be like, sure. And they'll give you cards to pass out. So then you're going to pass out cards, and you're going to, as Stephanie said before, you fill out your contact information, and it's basically like a commitment that you're going to vote yes for the union if a vote is required.
Yeah.
And at this point, the company can decide to acknowledge the union right then and there based on the amount of cards if it reaches 30% or more. But if they don't, then you can file a petition for an election with the NLRB. And then you kind of just wait it out. And that's the first step.
So it starts kind of with one-on-one communication.
Yes.
And then goes on to, well, for some outfits, selecting a union. I think in your case where Buffalo had just happened, that was their other obvious thing, right? It's the same union.
Yep.
Okay. And we've already talked about cards and card check and things like that. So maybe let's take a look back again at last Friday when the election the results of the election were counted. I think those were mail-in ballots, were they?
Yes.
And I think I can observe that while people committed to voting for the union, there was not going to be any verification of that because the ballots were anonymous.
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, I watched the Zoom where this NLRB official picks up one envelope after another and verifies that there is no identifying information on it. And then he carefully takes one ballot, opens the envelope, takes the ballot out, verifies that there's no extraneous stuff on the ballot. Then
it was a very long and tedious process.
Yes. Then he took the ballots one by one, looked at them, held them up to the camera. And if it said yes, he put it on the yes pile. And if it said no, he put it on the no pile. And what were the scores? I seem to remember College Town
was 19-1, Meadow Street was 13-1, and the Commons was 15-1.
And I guess partly that
who voted, but we don't know their votes unless they said.
We don't know who exactly who voted, because there were slightly more. I think I remember calculations about there are slightly more employees.
No, we do have a list of who voted.
Also, the votes only count the ones that reached the NLRB. There are some votes that maybe got lost in the mail or things like that, because there are definitely people who are like, oh, I voted, but they weren't on the vote count. We didn't tell them that because we don't want them to feel bad.
But anyway, it was so overwhelming. I mean, there were a couple of remarks from this official also that sometimes there's one challenged or one spoiled or something, but no way that changing the votes of even 3 ballots could have changed the results. So he said, so we're not even going to pursue this. And for each store, when the results came out, the workers cheered.
We made a lot of noise.
It was definitely a very cathartic.
By the way, can you name the union that will it be?
Yes, it is Workers United. So Workers United is an affiliate of the SCIU, like more of like a derivative of it. It really is only in a few locations in the United States, but obviously at this point with the union appearing in so many other states that the Workers United does not cover, they might open new joint boards in different regions. But it's mostly represented up in like the Northeast in the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area.
Well, and what comes next?
Next is collective bargaining. So this means that we are negotiating our first contract with Starbucks. So that's when we make that's when we propose any policy changes to the store, the way it's run, any wage increase proposals, things like that. that's the time that we sit down with all the Starbucks lawyers and basically give them a piece of our mind about how we think that we should be treated.
I see. And they sit down and probably tell you all to get lost or something, but
pretty much, yeah. And we've had really great support from the community through this. People, are very happy for us. And I hope that public support continues, because bargaining will be even harder than winning the union, because Starbucks really doesn't want to give us anything.
Yeah. So
and they want to, I think, demonstrate to other workers who might be considering this that there's no point in even trying.
So I imagine that you will be happy if people who got yard signs kept those yard signs up.
Yes, please do. Autumn Leaves Bookstore on the Commons has a yard sign for you.
Yeah, so. We're not out of the water yet. Not even close. Not until we get that first contract signed.
Okay. I'm curious, is it one contract at each store or?
Yes, it's one contract for each store. However, I think that for the most part, our contracts are going to be exactly the same. Maybe a few clauses will be different depending on the store's needs. But otherwise, it sounds about how it's going to be.
But I mean, is it separate negotiating sessions for each store?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but the stores have been inviting, workers from the different unionized stores to participate. So we have a united front against Starbucks to be members of each other's bargaining committees.
Oh, actually members of the bargaining committees. Oh, that's interesting. That's really, and that's nothing. I just thought you were telling me that workers from College Town would be bargaining with management from College Town, but people from others, workers from other stores would come and watch, but you're saying would actually be on the committee. Interesting. Yes. Okay.
Also, our managers, I'm not sure if the managers themselves are going to be there. I'm pretty sure these are going to be the Starbucks lawyers, like corporate lawyers and things like that.
Do you have any idea how long this process will take?
Well, Starbucks has been really filibustering. We're going to reconvene after an hour. Oops, looks like our time is up. Oh, guess we'll have to wait till the next time. And we're not free to schedule for another 2 or 3 weeks. They do all this pushing back and pushing back. So I would project that, it's going to take quite a while, maybe quite a few months in order to see our first contract get signed.
Okay.
But as they're delaying, it's just more stores unionizing, and the push is only getting stronger.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Evan Sunshine. Thank you, Stephanie Heslop, for giving us a behind-the-scenes picture from unionizing at Starbucks. This has been Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Theresa Alt.